All right, today let's get this Fairlead installed in that Land Rover. Our goal is to create a hole in the front of the bumper to enable the winch rope to pass through. So we're gonna cut some kind of hole right here, and that's where the winch rope will come through. So this Fairlead is gonna go here, and the winch rope's gonna come out. Next step. And probably drill a couple of holes once we find out where the Fairlead mount goes. And we're gonna have to measure by taking this bumper off. Once we take the bumper off, we'll figure out exactly where this goes so that we can drill a couple holes and start to get located. We're not sure about exactly how high it needs to be. Once we drill these couple holes, next step, then we'll cut an opening. We'll probably be cutting the opening like this, and we'll enlarge that opening as we go. And the final thing we'll do once we have that hole cut is tighten 2 bolts, and our Fairlead will be in place, ready to guide the winch rope. You can see where the license plate mount just drills straight into the plastic of the bumper. I'm not sure that the hole we're gonna make is gonna be that big. These holes might be left over. But I really don't know where exactly height-wise the Fairlead is gonna mount. So let's see if holograms can help. A little note about this. You know, hopefully you're not taking your bumper off and on so much like I am, but this corner, see how it's cracking here? That's not good. This corner is a kind of like a major spot where it holds everything in place. And when you're fitting this, there's a little peg back here on the back. But look, as I like stress that on and off, it's been cracking a little bit. That'd be really bad if this tab broke all the way off. I don't think it will, but just something you want to be careful with if you take your bumper on and off a lot. You know, as you test fit, getting the Fairlead to fit just right. You'll be putting the bumper on and off, and you want it in that final pose. And that's what it looks like with the bumper cover off. We've got a lot of practice. We've been in here quite a few times. But it's not too many tools required for that, not too many fasteners. But let me show you what I'm doing with this. This is a Fairlead bolt. Here's a better look at the task. So I already started to thread one of these in right here. And these 2 bolts are what are gonna hold that Fairlead in place. So I'm gonna thread this one here. And then look, I have to cut a hole in this area with all this honeycomb and stuff. That's really what our next step is to try to transfer an understanding of the position of these bolts in correlation with that honeycomb grid and start to cut. If you remember the previous video, this was where I cut some little pockets to keep those nuts in place. So watch this video to see what I did to keep that nut on the back side of this plate. But now let's see if we can get an impression transformed over to there, or maybe we'll just use holograms. Let's look. And we can now see those same steps, but what's happening behind the bumper. So I'll show you what I use this for in a moment. This is where I'm gonna need to cut the hole in the bumper so that this can come through and the rope can come off the bottom of the winch and out the Fairlead. Let's just go through the next few steps. So these are gonna be the most useful holograms for me as I try to drill the right holes for this Fairlead. Look what's so cool about them. The center of the ring and the tip of the arrow, well, that's exactly where the Fairlead bolt goes. And so when this is installed on the outside of the bumper, that's gonna mount like this. Those holograms, they stay in place no matter what angle I'm at or where I go. So as I lift this bumper cover up into place, like that, I'll be able to use these as guidance for where to drill my holes. So the workflow I'm investigating is with these arrows. Now they're only accurate to about a centimeter or 2. The way we can measure that is from our anchor point. You can see I've got this permanent anchor point up here on the underside of my hood. It's always in the same spot. So every meter, we're about 1 centimeter in 3D directions accurate. The further we get from that, we're about 2 meters away, we're about 2 centimeters accurate. That's close, but you can see even as I move a little, there's just a little bit of motion in these. I wanted to show you the old-fashioned way, which is I took this Sharpie. So as I position this, they're gonna give me a really nice guidance and I'll know exactly where to drill these holes. So yeah, I'm going to use the tips of these arrows as guides for drilling some holes. But if you didn't have these holograms, I'll show you another way you can do it. Get your bumper skin up as tight as it can go. Yeah, see, so when you test fit this thing, this little tab comes out. See, that's like a little stud, goes in that hole. That's how you know everything's lined up. And so something I found when fitting the winch plate was, you know, I really needed to make sure to get both of these on both sides lined up. And when you're lining those up, you know it's pushed in far enough that these mounts are going into their appropriate plastic inserts, right? You have to go forward enough for these. You can feel down in here and use this marker. And with one hand, you're feeling for that bolt head, and with the other finger, you're kind of like marking the plastic, exactly where that bolt is. And that'll just give you an idea. And then you can drill from the other side. So I did that too. And I got some marks here. After these holes are drilled, we're going to go to the next step. And this is cool because we'll know where this center point is and where this center point is. And once we know where those are, we're going to cut a line between them. The reason is, and we're going to start with this small line, which will be right there in the center of the Fairlead mount. And these green arrows represent just growing that hole bigger little by little. We're going to go cautious and slow and try to just keep, you know, ultimately what we cut out of here, this will go like that on the other side, but we only need to cut an oval this big. So that's why we'll first just connect our two holes and then slowly expand that with some test fitting. Let's try it. Okay, these two things, they're aligning just beside the grids here. So I'm going to drill two little pilot holes and see what happens. We'll check them from the outside. All right. So here's my two new holes. And what I'm going to do is shine a light in there and see if I can see the heads of those Fairlead bolts. Okay, I drilled the second hole, and what's nice about that is the light can go in the first hole and you can kind of see what's going on back behind there. So now I'm going to use a larger diameter drill and, you know, just have a nice big hole here, and I should see perfectly behind there a hex bolt. Then I'll address some of that kind of like, then I'll address that grid work on the other side. Okay, before I drill bigger holes, I figured, hey, why not just like measure this? And so I did. And what I learned was, from center to center, it's basically exactly 10 inches or 25.5 centimeters. So then I'm just going to make sure what I'm doing down here I do at 10 inches or 25.5 centimeters. Alright, so these holes I drilled are lining up at 10 inches, 25.5 centimeters. So it's time to use this drill and make them bigger. Okay, let's see if these arrows line up. All right, hide holograms. Oh yeah, look at that. Let me get you a light. Where's the light? There it is. There's our bolt head in there. Can you see it? Or a little bit high, maybe. No, it looks pretty good. Let's cut our line across the front and go from there. Show holograms. Isn't that cool? What a great technology. Okay, look at this. You can see the Fairlead hex screws in there. So these holes are lined up really nice. But I started to think about, because it's back set, this Fairlead could almost be flush mount. Almost everybody mounts it on the outside of the bumper skin on these long Fairlead bolts. But what if this was like under the skin, back behind? Now I'm getting kind of excited, almost have a change of plans. Notice how this is about as deep as a Band-Aid fingertip? Well, guess what? This stuff I gotta cut away is about as deep as a Band-Aid fingertip. Meaning, if I cut away exactly this profile, it'll be a real troublesome job in there, but if I do it, it will be almost flush mount. I'll probably have to get a little bit longer Fairlead bolts and some nuts to kind of space this out, or washers or something. I mean, I need to do that anyways if I do surface mount, but I'm just excited about doing a flush mount. I haven't seen that before, so it's just a lot more work. I think I'll start by just cutting out this sort of slot. You know, the advantage of the slot method is you can have a kind of sloppy cut because it's hidden by the Fairlead. But if I'm gonna have this thing flush mount, I'll have to cut it exactly at the full profile. I might, take a little bit more finesse. Yeah, it would be so cool if this was just flush. If this front surface was flush with the bumper, it was kind of inside there. But no matter what, I'm going to have to either cut out this entire shape, but definitely a path for the winch rope, right here through the Fairlead. This is where we drilled some holes. Next step. This is our next task. So we know holographically where these two holes are, and we're just going to kind of connect them here. That's going to be the start of the opening we create. We're going to iterate quite a bit, and there's a lot of cutting to do on the back side. But let's cut this one to start. This is going to take a lot of iteration, but the first thing is just using this cutoff wheel to connect these two holes. We're going to pull it off and keep going. See how cool that hologram is? We know that it's going to help us line this up. But I'm hoping we can see down underneath now. Oh, we got a lot of ways to go. So the next challenge is, there's this much space, and all that space is filled with this honeycomb plastic. So I'm going to hack away at that off camera for a while and just start taking these ribs out. And then the next time I lay it up here, you should have a hole that you're seeing. Now we've just connected this line, and we're making good progress. The back is where all the work's really going to be. Alright, the next thing I want to do, you can see I've elongated these holes a little bit more just to get a better alignment, make sure everything's looking good there. And that's where my bolt's eventually going to come through. But like I'm saying, whether I cut the entire profile out and inset it so it's flush, or just do this slot, either way, I need to do the slot area. So I'm gonna start by using a pen there. I'm gonna just take this Sharpie and line this up. Once I'm happy with it, I'm gonna trace the slot, and then I'll. All right. Get that about right where it goes, and that where it goes. I can be a bit generous here because I have this much space to cover my hole, but I need at least to get this whole slot cut out. So let's cut that next. Okay, Okay, what we're gonna do next doesn't have to be that precise, but I did want to know, so I kind of traced it a few times. We got this oval shape, but I'm actually gonna cut from my two slots all the way across for both of those, and that'll allow the rope to have plenty of freedom to move and not get snagged. So I've been using this little electric grinding tool, but it's taking forever. And so I'm gonna start using a 4.5 inch angle grinder. And if I end up trying to flush mount that thing, I'll probably use a jigsaw a little bit. Somebody once told me that every job is made a lot harder with the wrong tools. So what I think is if you got the right tools, the job should be easier. I think this grinder is going to kind of make really quick work of those straight across cuts. Ooh. Oh, it's so hot it melted to my fingers. Ouch. That's going to leave a mark. I should put tape here. Wow, yeah, it's liquefied. Look, that's where it was melting. And it melted to my finger. Got most of it off. Hurt though. I'm gonna run a line of tape here so I can cut a straight line. Okay, now let's do the bottom. Oh, it's just so melty. Oh, it's just molten. Ouch. I'm gonna have a blister from where I touched it. I'm gonna wait for it to cool and then I'll pick that off and do the bottom. Ooh. So, take a look down inside here. This whole rib that I'm pinching, that rib is going to be completely cut away. There's one of the Fairlead bolt holes, the other one's here, and so next I'm going to take the angle grinder in here and cut each of these little fins and ribs so I can have that perfect slot. The bottom of this kind of like circular structure, all of that's going to be gone. This tool made quick work of that job. Let's flip it over and look at those ribs we got to cut. Ooh, it's hot. It's still molten. You gotta wait till that cools and then you can pick it off. It's kind of gratifying. I'll show you. Yeah, I like to just pick it off. It comes. Oh, it feels good. You can kind of get a better idea of what your cut looks like if you break this crap off. Whoops, gotcha. Probably good enough. So, like I was saying, you know, that cut's going to be mostly hidden by this once it's put in place. We might have to make it a little bigger upwards or downwards, like the holographic arrows showed. Yeah, so after we figure out exactly how high this is and drill a couple holes, we're going to cut a slot all the way across, and then we'll start expanding that slot until it's appropriately enlarged to allow the rope to feed through without abrading on anything. But better to cut twice and have the right size than cut too big at first. All right, look, now you can see that line. That's the bottom of the slot or opening, and here's the top. So now all I have to do is kind of cut each of these fins. That shouldn't be too bad. Okay, here's the results. We're getting those cut really nicely. See these notches? It's going to be a little more difficult on the inside because there's this wire running here. And when the phone fell over, I was trying to cut with the grinding disc here, but I think I'm going to switch to a more nimble tool like, I don't know, maybe not the jigsaw, maybe even just some snips or the Dremel that can get in and around here easier. Because I want to take this whole oval shape out. And the edge work is too small of work for this big of tool, right? I'll end up getting into that wire. I taped the wire back, but anyways, let's get a new tool. All right, an update on this. Well, I did notice all kinds of, you know, this plastic debris everywhere, but these end cutters have been doing really good. But look, I was able to, you can kind of see this slanted angle here. And also you can see this white area. That's where some ribs used to be, like this one. I just snap them off my thumb. And I'm flexing a few times in this. But I got in there and I cut this at an angle. And I cut this at an angle. And now, the moment of truth. All right. So that's what we had to remove. Wow, there's our hole, there's our opening. We might make it bigger, but let's test fit it. There's a rough opening. That's gonna go right there to the winch drum. We can see the Fairlead bolts. They're not long enough, so I probably won't be able to get that on tonight. I need longer bolts, but we're making progress. Alright, just checking in. We've been making some good progress. I kind of cleaned up the edge from the outside here. I just did the top too. It's probably still, ouch, a little too hot. I've been using tape as guidelines. And next I'm going to kind of probably use a big drill bit and round these couple corners out. And then I'll take the bumper off one more time and clean up these fins from the inside. But we're getting close. All right, it's starting to look okay. But I'm just thinking as the winch, you know, rope pays out there, I don't want it to get kind of caught up on these fins. So I'm gonna kind of clearance those fins. They don't look so bad straight on, but definitely they all need cut back. And then I have one more idea, which is to use some of this automotive edge trim. And if I'm gonna put that trim on here, it's a little too wide in some spots. So I might use the Dremel tool to, where it's double layered like that, I might cut back the backside. And then I'll trim this with that. And then the last thing, although it's a little strange, I'm just gonna bolt my Fairlead in place behind here. And probably put my license plate cover back on, just for now. I gotta spool the rope and such, but I'm running out of time for today. All right, I just buzzed these two fins off. I'm doing 2 at a time, so I got a couple more to go. All right, got them. Okay, I still need to do this corner, this kind of like rib in this corner, but I don't want to use the angle grinder because it's going to start cutting wires. Look, I can't get that in there. So I'm going to swap over to our friendly smaller cutting disc, the Dremel tool, and I'll be able to get right in there and kind of like cut that back. Same thing on this side. Just need to cut that back a little bit right there. Okay, this is looking pretty good. So I'll just trim it up and we'll be done for the night. All right, well, this is the kind of structure that gets cut out. And it's a lot of cutting. There's all these fins and stuff. But that's how you get your winch line to come through the bumper. So the last thing I want to do is run a little bit of this edge trim. You can see it's just kind of like got a channel in it. It's just nice hard kind of like vinyl plastic. And I'm starting to make a thin little shelf. You can see all my Dremel marks from this small grinder. So I'm not going all the way through. But the problem is right now that plastic is too thick. So in order to make it the right size for this channel, I'm just kind of like creating that shelf all the way around. It's pretty tedious. You probably shouldn't do it. Okay, nice. So we made that half as thick all the way around. And one thing I just think we should take note of is it'd be pretty important to kind of like sweep this crap. We don't want all that plastic getting up in the wire or the synthetic winch line. So let's brush all this off before we spool it, because there's plastic debris everywhere. Okay, so there shouldn't be any more cutting. So I just want to kind of clean up all of this stuff because I'm going to be down on my, I just like to clean up. Move on to the next thing. Got a little finishing touch here. I'm just running this trim around that hole. It's going to be nice. Woo-wee. Alright, we got that edge trim on there, and that was certainly the hardest part of the job. Now, look, I need much longer Fairlead bolts. So, our stopping point for tonight is going to be mounting the Fairlead behind the bumper. And that's silly, but remember, it's temporary. This is that edge trim. It comes in a coil like this. And so I've added that. It says tighten the Fairlead bolts and optionally add edge trim. This Fairlead is actually supposed to be bolted to the outside of the bumper. But the bolts I have are too short. So I've measured it'll fit under here. And remember, I kind of want to flush mount it later. So what I want you to know is this is a temporary setup. But it is time to tighten these in place. That's strong. I'm moving the whole truck.
There's a non-supported next to my right as well. That's my bench.
Look, the computer knows where my fingertips are. So I've tightened this up, and it's time to put this over the top, just temporarily. Hide holograms. Nice. I'm getting pretty good at this. We can line this up and line those tabs up. So check that out. Now this isn't how it's gonna be, but it does fit under there. So this is why I'm kind of interested in flush mounting it at exactly the shape of that Fairlead. I'm never gonna run it like this. This is temporary until I get the longer Fairlead bolts so that I can be out here on the other side of the bumper. But I might use it to spool the winch rope. So stay tuned for that. Next step. Now mind you, this bumper's still on loose, so it doesn't look totally fit and finished. That's okay. We got more to do in there. So stay tuned. I'll show you how to spool that. Okay, so when you screw the bumper down, it goes into these white clips. And pro tip, sometimes they slide off, man. So if you hear something clip, something fall, look for it. I heard it over here a while ago. I didn't know where it was. When I went to fasten that, there's nothing to fasten it into. So look here. There it is. It fell out and it's right here. So the way these go in is big side towards the front of the vehicle. Just like that. Nice. So check back for when we spool that winch rope.